Newsround. Gillette Labs. Get the ultimate shave or your money back. Neon Night Edition available now.
This is News Talk.
All right, you're welcome along. It is Thursdays Off the Ball. Nathan with you until 10 o'clock. We got a packed show coming up. John Giles on the brilliance of Manchester City from 7:30. Philippe Auclair on the other side of Manchester City coming your way from 9 o'clock. We'll have Shabana Hearn on a pivotal week in the WSL, and at 8 o'clock, a really interesting piece. Martin Fogarty, who was on the sidelines with Brian Cody for so many years at Kilkenny, and then moved on to a very different position as the Hurling National Development Manager for 5 years, and he'll be giving his thoughts on the state of the game at probably more grassroots level and away from the 8-9 counties where hurling is absolutely thriving, and the work that he did, the work he's trying to do, and the obstacles that he has faced as hurling faces extinction in certain parts of the country. Will O'Callaghan,
host of the Hurling Pod, here to defend hurling.
Defend this hurling man. Martin Fogarty, more of a hurling man even than you.
He is the hurling man. I would argue as Cody's right-hand man, along with Mick Dempsey, for all of those years, effectively 2 decades. They are on the Hurling Council, effectively, along with Cody as the High Priest of hurling. And I don't know the extinction line. Obviously, you're being a bit facetious here. Can you really make something extinct where it never really took off?
Lived. Can you be extinct if you've never really lived?
It's very philosophical, but yeah.
That's the way we should have opened it.
I remember reading Martin Fogarty's piece with Declan Bogue when he had left this role, which happened during COVID, and he's never been replaced since. So hurling has been without a national director since 2021, and he was making the point that he probably wasn't as aware until he went particularly to Ulster and realised the situation in some of the counties where legitimately there were only a couple of clubs there, and there was very little infrastructure around hurling. It was even more surprising than he expected when he arrived. And I think that's really stood out, that you kind of, when you put it down that way, and if we were to tally the job that would be required, it's maybe bigger even than some people would expect when they talk about the idea of trying to promote hurling. And then you saw how solidly Liam Griffin's motion was beaten at Congress this year. You have to wonder about the appetite countrywide to grow the game of hurling.
Well, there is no great appetite in a huge amount of clubs, and it was interesting talking to Martin about his experience in certain counties, strong football counties, as to when he went in and he spoke to people and, let's try and get a juvenile hurling set up, and the resistance that was in his way. Now, firstly, there's a lack of knowledge there of hurling in the first place to actually go and coach the game, but that an awful lot of clubs are football clubs. I was making the point, are they not GAA clubs? And he's like, they're football clubs.
Yep.
And they don't want to be a GAA club with hurling involved. So,
and even in some dual counties where genuinely both games are being promoted fairly equally, you can have a situation where there's a football club in the area and there's a hurling club in the area, and they're almost like sister clubs without being connected. But the feeling is that the lads who want to play hurling can go and play with the hurling club, and the football club will be separate. And then that creates all sorts of issues when it comes to the season and when the club championships get underway, and team players are having to go out and play every 2 or 3 days as a result, because there's not that joined up thinking because the clubs are separate. And then you add in, like Martin Fogarty's own county, where they found their own curious way to solve the calendar with the football championships, where the football in Kilkenny effectively ends before the summer gets underway, and then hurling, which is by far the dominant sport within the county, has the summer as a run for itself once Kilkenny have been knocked out of the championship.
Richie McCormack, good evening.
Lads, how are ye?
Before you say a Kilkenny man preaching about, just one sport, what have they, 34 football clubs in Kilkenny?
And an All-Ireland Junior Championship, where our own hurling pod co-host Paul Murphy was the teak tough full back in that team.
Yeah, Paul, don't tune in between 8 and 9. Your All-Ireland is a very worthwhile thing in football. It's an equal of all your hurling medals, but I did like the way Martin spoke about football of, they're into it, so they sort of go and play their games and do that thing and have a bit of fun with it. Like, not too serious. Like, they're just, it's not like the hurling, which we take seriously, but there's still an opportunity if you're into football in Kilkenny to play it. Yep. Whereas if you're interested in hurling, and if you grew up and you somehow had to move county away from a Tipperary or a Kilkenny and move up north, the chances of you finding a hurling club are fairly slim.
Depends where you land. If you go into Down, Antrim or Derry, where there are areas that are particularly strong and there's some hugely strong clubs in that area, you're probably fine.
By and large,
But there are
you're
definitely
going to struggle.
Yeah, there's pockets of the country where hurling is largely forgotten about, particularly at adult level. That's the thing. There's provision there for children to play a bit, and then it never really follows through to adult level. Which to me, at least, I think it's an awful pity that it's not promoted a little bit more. Again, I'm not sure what the answer is, and people can listen to Martin for that upcoming hour of chat that you have.
We didn't have any balance, Richie, with this. It was all about what we can do to grow hurling. Maybe I should have got. Maybe it's too much hurling. Maybe there's too much hurling.
Stamp it out. Get rid of it entirely. Now, there's when you think about it, it's interesting that for decades now at this stage, they obviously operated individually, but they're going to collectively come under the GA banner eventually. But you did have the Ladies Gaelic Association and the Camogie Association, and I wonder, is there scope within the GA banner to essentially have a self-operating hurling unit within the GA instead of it being all under the one and everything kind of being, parsed out here and there on a club-by-club basis, whether you can have a dedicated wing of the GEA which is solely looking after hurling. It's probably something that they would need to look into down the line.
You must have been listening, because that was basically the end point from Martin Fogarty was, I was asking about
Spoiler.
I was asking him about resources, because he had that role for 5 years. There's nobody in that role right now as to what resources are available when you are trying to grow hurling. He said it's not an open door at all towards finances. You've got to make the case for equipment, you've got to make the case for coaching courses, all of that sort of stuff.
And you probably need someone, Nathan, in that position, because ultimately it will flow up from the games development officers who are in the counties in question now, and maybe you'll have, say, a regional development officer who would then be feeding in. But I think you probably need an overall director to go and have those conversations with the Director General or those who are on the high level committees.
Well, that's what he was making the point, that on these committees, actually, do you have enough people on them who are fighting for hurling, and are fighting not just for hurling, but are fighting for the second and third tier hurling counties? And at the moment, there's just not.
My suspicion is they would fight remarkably hard for these sold out games that are in the Munster Championship right now, the Leinster final, the All-Ireland Series.
See them.
Which are a great showcase, and I'm sure bring in tremendous revenue to the GAA, but I would say what happens further down is probably of less importance.
What are you on about? Sunday afternoon, nothing but hurling. What about the great Gaels of this country from Mayo and Kerry, who provided more entertainment, let's be honest, than any hurling counties have over the last decade? Mayo and Kerry footballers. And they're behind the paywall.
Well,
and everyone's just getting on with it, aren't they? Everyone's getting on with it. They'll pay their money. They'll reward these players. It's fine. No bitching and moaning
here. You're going
to
Kilkenny now today?
I've got to Kilkenny. I've got stuff on Saturday afternoon.
I'm watching the golf instead.
Well, the golf will be on. It's like a perfect... you go straight from Mayo, Kerry, Champions Cup final, golf for the evening. Thing of beauty.
All on the couch. Would not be a thing of beauty to go down to Kerry for the weekend?
Too expensive hotels. What's your point? I don't understand what your point is.
Oh no, just quintessential Mayo football man. Be expecting to be on the terraces.
Well, I'm a quintessential Mayo football man that I live in Dublin, and when they're playing in Croke Park, I head over there. It's a bloody long way from Dublin to everywhere. That's the problem here. And also, it's not straight knockout.
Well, there is that element.
No hotel rooms in Killarney. Don't you be criticising me. Bloody hell, awfully win one match. And
where we? Yeah, and Will wasn't even there.
Just because you never have to travel anywhere. Where were you last night? Tweeting about it.
Go to Cullen Park. No,
had to work. Yeah,
outrageous.
I know.
Had to work,
Richie. Plus, by the time I would have considered going, the game was already sold out at that point. Such was the Offaly support. I probably could get in, Arthur. Yeah, Arthur's I've said probably couldn't get. I probably could have got in the press pass. Yes, but anyway,
absolutely.
Michael Verney was there. I think I'm not sure he used his press pass to get in or not, but I saw a picture doing the rounds of him jumping up, punching the air beside Michael Dignan on the pitch afterwards.
Well, you see, Verney's a proper hurling man. He's actually paying into these things, unlike you, Will.
There you go.
And he's going in the first place, actually.
Indeed.
53106 is the text number. Richie is with us because it is the news round right here on Off the Ball, and there is lots of golf for us this evening. The PGA Championship was slightly delayed, a little bit of frost, but Rory's out in the course and he is just about dragging himself back into the tournament.
Yeah, he had a brutal front nine. Let's be quite honest about that. I think he shot a 38 on the front nine, so he was 3 over par there. He has dragged himself back into contention with birdies at 3 and 4. He's played obviously at the 10th for his first hole, but he's back to 1 over par. He has 5 to play of his first round. Also on 1 over is Padraig Harrington. He too is with 5 out from home. Shane Lowry is 2 over par also another man who has 5 holes of his first round left to play. Ryan Fox is the current leader with 3 to play at Oak Hill. He is on 3 under par. As you mentioned there this morning, a 2-hour delay to the start of play due to frost on course, and that means that Seamus Power won't be out until just after 8:30 this evening.
Global warming is what's going on. We've had a Grand Prix cancelled because of flooding, and now frost in May in New York delaying the US PGA. So Rory's shown a bit of grit, bit of fight here, as you say. Disastrous opening 9, 3 over par, back-to-back birdies. He's back to 1 over par. So he's only 4 shots off the lead. I think if he finished 4 shots off the lead on day 1, he would take quite a bit of confidence from that, and confidence is clearly an issue with him right now. When you just look at his general demeanour and his tone in his press conferences, he looks like he's a little bit shell-shocked with what happened at the Masters. He spoke in his press conference of the night before the Masters, never being as confident that he was going to play well at Augusta, talking to Bob Rotella and basically saying, I feel too good. How do I stay in a level? Which is not the greatest recommendation for Bob Rotella's work, that he goes and stinks the joint out 2 days later. But to go from that to where he is now, and more or less 0 expectations coming into this, I think if he gets in after day 1, 4 shots back, job done.
Are you saying the advice there was to pour too much cold water and actually...
Well, there's never a middle ground with McIlroy. It is all or nothing. He is God, or it is just complete disaster. So,
well, given his experience at quite a few of the recent majors, as long as he's not out of contention by the end of day 1, at least that's something he can build on for tomorrow. And no one's really running away at the moment. Our old friend Ryan Fox right up there at the top of the leaderboard, and I'm sure you're about to tell us, Nathan, about his lineage as the son of a former All Black. And I remember following around.
One of the great things about you as a broadcaster, Will, is that you never need to tell them you're in there first.
There you go. Steal the line from you. But I remember us following him around at Ballylifton when he was going really well at the Irish Open. He's one of those players who tends to do well at the Irish Open.
Yeah, he's a very good European Tour player, and does pop up the odd time in a major. He was beaten in a playoff that year in Ballylifton in the Irish Open. So he's 3 under par. Victor Hovland, 3 under par as well. There was a sense that this course might suit Hovland. It is more of a US Open type course, which means the scoring isn't expected to be particularly low, that 5, 6 under par might actually go and win this tournament. And the bits I've seen on TV so far, it does have that look of very tight fairways. The rough is going to make it very difficult. But the one that's there, Scotty Scheffler, who is a shot off the lead. He's been playing really solid golf, but his putter has let him down big time so far this season, and particularly over the last couple of months. He's thereabouts, but he's also outside the top 100 in the strokes game putting stats. So even a slight improvement in his putting, and he's the likely winner of this tournament. John Ram, I see, he's had 3 straight bogeys.
It's interesting that Gary Murphy the other night was saying that on that putting point, that Scheffler is so good around the fairways that he's always going to give himself chances. So if it just starts to go on a streak of good putting, he's a guy who will naturally give himself loads of birdie opportunities here. So, well,
he's the standout name, I think, even though Hovland is obviously very much an emerging force right now. But the fact that Scheffler is there, just a shot off the lead right there on day 1, will have everybody else a bit worried. Anything else further down the leaderboard, Richie?
Not really to mention. There's a mentioned Harrington and Larry, and they're
Larry's back to 2 over par now.
2 over par, yeah. So. Bryson is there on 2 under par. Keegan Bradley's on 2 under par. Colin Morikawa is one of those who's on 1 under at the moment. He has 5 to play. Then you're down into the likes of Luke Donald and JT Poston, who are level. So it's kind of condensed, and as long as you're not 5 adrift, I'd say, at the end of the first day, you're probably in with a fair enough chance, once your play improves, to drag yourself back into contention.
Hurling needs its own national organisation, otherwise it'll stay the same. P.S. Expect some bloodshed between the 2 organisations at ground level, says Anthony, a former hurling coach in the football county.
How mysterious.
Bloodshed.
I hope it doesn't go that far.
The opposite regarding promoting football also holds true in hurling counties. There's very little appetite to promote football in Limerick, and it's even discouraged in that players are no longer allowed play dual in minor anymore. This is biased towards hurling, because anyone decent at both football and hurling will most often choose hurling.
It's a difficult one for the hearts and minds, isn't it? Particularly when a county is very successful in one code. So right now, if you were a really good underage player in Limerick and football or hurling is the choice laid before you,
Grode Hegarty.
Yeah, you're going to stick with hurling, aren't you?
Well, look at Dublin.
Well, exactly, complete opposite. I mean, I remember I was only actually having a look back at the last Leinster under-20 final where Dublin beat Offaly a few years ago, and Conor Callaghan and Colin Baskell were on the team for Dublin and were their star players, scored the goals in the night, and then almost straight away they went to football when a choice had to be made beyond under-20, and well, I think they've both done reasonably okay.
Jesus, lads, I don't pay for Golf Weekly to avoid this kind of stuff. Fair enough. That's fair. Listen, it's 4 times a year. Now, it's not our fault they changed the schedule and the 4 times come quite condensed now. It's 4 times a year we get to talk about this on a Thursday night. Give us a little bit of something.
Is this a new Patreon plan? You pay £4 and don't have to listen to Golf Chat?
Just give us the money.
I don't
care whether you listen or not once the cash is in. That's how these things work. Live football tonight. Big night for West Ham.
Yeah, lots of live football tonight. West Ham hoping to reach their first European final since 1976. They have taken a 2-1 lead with them to Alkmaar for the second leg of their Conference League semi-final with AZ. Elsewhere in that competition, Basel hold a 2-1 lead at home to Fiorentina. Roma take a 1-0 advantage to Bayer Leverkusen for the second leg of their Europa League semi-final. Sevilla and Juventus resume level at a goal apiece. Newcastle entertain Brighton in the Premier League tonight. There's a 7:30 start at St James's Park. Evan Ferguson and Alexis McAllister are among those on the bench tonight for Brighton.
Yeah, obviously a big game for both Newcastle as they look to secure Champions League football, and for Brighton as they look to get Europa League football. Brighton have so many games left that they're having to rotate a huge amount. So I think 4 changes, Levi Colwill not even in the squad, and McAllister on the bench, Ferguson on the bench. So what might have looked like a very tricky game for Newcastle, I think when you look at that Brighton starting 11, you would think maybe they'll be all right. But then you think back to that Chelsea game, and Brighton made a load of changes that day and put together one of the best performances of the season. It's going to be a good game.
Hopefully. I mean, sometimes they don't make a huge amount of sense, Brighton. We look at the Everton performance and then they go and beat Arsenal away from home straight after that. So it is, you said, they have to make decisions though about who they play and who they don't play. Maybe they looked at the calendar and said Newcastle away, who are going to be going all guns tonight to try and get that step closer to Champions League. Maybe this is the one you scratch and you prioritise your points elsewhere.
Lads, why do Kilkenny not field a team in football? The only county that gets to opt out. At least even the weakest counties can field a team in hurling. Kilkenny seem to get a free pass on this one and get to focus exclusively on hurling. Not fair. Says a lot of anonymous texting tonight. Put your name to it.
The not fair makes it sound like
they do have a football team. Your colleague has a All-Ireland medal, as we mentioned, in football. So they just don't enter the All-Ireland series.
No, not the league.
But with the amount of football teams they have, they could surely stick a team in. But would there be any point to it?
I think the step, if they're to come back, has to be to go into Division 4 of the Football League and then build from there. But I think that's still a few years away, seems to be.
Maybe the Tailteann Cup gives them an opportunity where would you give them the chance to
go into a preliminary quarter-final,
go into Leinster when they get rid of the provincial championships, play Division 4, play Tailteann Cup, happy days.
Yeah, I mean, that generally could be a runner. Like the fact that New York get certain provisions at the moment, if Kilkenny felt that they couldn't play in the provincial championship because, again, they're playing their local club championship at the time, could they be parachuted in as a preliminary quarter-finalist to rejoin the championship? I don't know.
So, obviously the league season is coming to an end in England, but we are, 4 weeks away from the Republic of Ireland's next qualifier in Greece, and it's providing quite a headache for Stephen Kenny because a lot of the players are finished, nearly 2 weeks at this stage in the championship. So he's going to have a couple of get-togethers. He's going to have a long run in Turkey ahead of the game in Greece and try and acclimatise to the heat and all that sort of stuff. But he's getting a 22-man squad together for 4 days in Bristol next week, and some interesting stories out of this.
Yeah, Seamus Coleman, Andrew Omabamidele and Callum Robinson are all going to miss next month's Euro 2024 qualifiers with Greece and Gibraltar through injury. Stephen Kenny has named a 22-man panel for that 4-day training camp in the equally balmy Bristol next week. It's mainly comprised of EFL players, but there's room too for Derry and Bohemians goalkeepers Brian Maher and James Talbot, and Shamrock Rovers' Neil Farrugia. Also called up are the uncapped Hull and Millwall defenders Sean McLaughlin and Danny McNamara, also having scored 8 goals in 20 championship games while on loan at Preston from Everton. There's a chance for Tommy Cannon to impress.
Yeah, obviously the Premier League players and the likes of Matt Doherty and Mikey Johnston still have to come back into this. But firstly, Noah Omabamidele it's just so disappointing for himself and Ida for 18 months at this stage. Just haven't been able to get a run with the national team at all. Barely played any football at international level. Coleman would have started in Greece without question, so two big blows there straight away. Neil Ferrugia, the only outfield player from the league in the squad. He's been tipped. I did think the way Jack Byrne was playing, maybe he might get himself back in there. There are obviously a lot of options in the middle of midfield. Ferrugia has a chance, I think, of making the main squad.
Yeah, it's kind of seeing where he'd be a squad player, though. He's not somebody I can see being parachuted into the squad in a similar way, say, that Mikey Johnston was, whereby they get in and then straight away they're kind of in with a chance of starting the game, or certainly the first clutch of replacements coming off the bench. With Ferrugia, like, obviously bring him in, have a look at him. I don't know if he's getting near a starting 11 anytime soon, particularly with the options that Kenny does have in that particular area around about now. Similarly with the goalkeepers, like, I see the absolute needs to bring them in and have people working there, but I wouldn't say with a heavy heart that James Talbot has been the best goalkeeper in the Premier Division so far this season. Brian Maher probably is deserving and a bit overdue for that chance. But yeah, there's a couple of players in there. You absolutely see the benefit. Like, for someone like Ryan Manning, who's in that squad as well today, like, it's a huge chance for him because he's been overlooked for so many squads, when, you know, his form for Swansea would have suggested that he was more than worthy of a place in Stephen Kenny's thoughts. But yeah, like, I don't think too much should be read into it. I think that the main headlines coming out of that are obviously Coleman's injury, Amon Bamadeli's injury, and whether or not someone like Sean McLaughlin can prove his worth to make that step up. And someone like Andy Lyons is probably unlucky to miss out. But again, we're probably nitpicking when you're getting down to that stage.
So Manchester City's performance last night been described as maybe the greatest first 45 minutes that's ever been from an English team in European football, and it's been met since then with the 115 charges of financial impropriety being mentioned at every single turn. Obviously, Richie, City have kept the heads down today. Let's keep the talk on football as much as we can from their point of view, right?
Yeah, I think the timing of this today, I think you'd be a bit naive if you don't think they're connected to the discourse that's been around this week. Manchester City have lodged legal challenges to the 115 charges of financial impropriety which they're facing. Rather than addressing the substance of those charges, they claim recent changes to Premier League rules mean they shouldn't apply to investigations into breaches which came prior to those changes. City are also questioning the involvement of Murray Rosen KC, who is believed to be an Arsenal fan. Rosen is the head of the Premier League's independent judicial panel.
Nathan, by what round of the Championship do you start attending Mayo games?
Wasn't sent by me, just in case.
In this industry, you know, we like work at the weekends, so every Championship game so far I've been covering a Premier League game, so that has been ruled out. As we enter the summer, I will make my decisions based upon the nice trips that may await. So preliminary quarter-final, I'm definitely in if Mayo end up stuck in that.
Yeah, green and red jersey comes out of mop ball storage room.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And, you know, places with corporate boxes and things like that, where a good day can be had by all. Lads, can we F right off with your talk of restoring Kilkenny football? We can barely hurl at the moment.
Yeah.
Really?
Well, they're looking at the moment.
They're looking at what?
So Mick Dempsey, who would have worked alongside Bo Fogarty and Cody, is now involved in a committee, I believe, to look at it's one of those where it's like a steering group where they're looking at the lack of success that Kilkenny have had at underage level in recent years and concerns about their development panels. The last county I ever thought would be having to look into their underage structures would be the Kilkenny hurlers, like if the Kerry footballers had to do the same. So I don't know. I mean, obviously they're a little bit concerned. Galway and Offaly won the provincial championships this year in 20s and minor, but it seems that Kilkenny are maybe not bringing through as many players as they hoped a little bit further down. But
a bit of success for Offaly and Kilkenny are in absolute crisis.
It seems so, yeah. Maybe that's the trigger.
Even the Kilkenny crest only has hurling on it. I don't think you're right, Stephen, on YouTube. If I look at the crest, there is clearly a slitter there between the two players, but down the bottom I think that's football.
Could definitely be interpreted as a football.
Could be interpreted as a football, or maybe just something they're standing on, but it does
look
look
like
could
be the moon, could be a football.
A couple of other stories, Richie.
I'm just looking at the ball there. Corey Connors, by the way, is 3 birdies and 4 holes. Seeing him go to 4 under par at the top of the leaderboard at Oak Hill. Rory McIlroy bogeyed the 5th there, and he's back to 2 over par. Elsewhere, Jurgen Klopp has been given a 1-match touchline ban with another suspended. He's been punished for those comments he made after last month's Premier League game with Tottenham. Klopp is going to miss Saturday's visit of Aston Villa to Anfield, their final home game. He's also been fined £75,000. The second game of his ban is suspended until the end of next season. Rafa Nadal, meanwhile, confirmed today he won't play at next week's French Open. The 14-time Roland Garros champion still hasn't recovered from a hip injury that first arose during January's Australian Open. Nadal's also ruled himself out of Wimbledon. It's also likely he'll probably miss the US Open too, and he says next year will be his last on tour. And Eddie Hearn says Katie Taylor getting stopped on Saturday night would likely put the kibosh on a Croke Park fight. Both Taylor and Chantel Cameron held a press conference this afternoon ahead of Saturday's meeting at Dublin's 3 Arena. Hearn says he believes Taylor has 3 to 5 professional fights left in her, and a close fight on Saturday would likely mean a rematch in Croke Park. Taylor, though, says she's ready to face the undisputed super lightweight champion.
Yeah, I think one thing that has marked my career over the years is I never picked the easy challenge. I want the biggest tests and the biggest challenges. And what's the point, really? I have a chance to become a 2-weight undisputed champion on Saturday evening in front of my home crowd. This is absolutely so special. I am expecting a tough fight, but I feel like I am ready for whatever comes my way on Saturday evening.
It is an insane weekend of sport.
Just a bit, yeah. Particularly, as you said, if you're sitting down watching the rugby, you go straight into the Katie Taylor fight pretty much directly after that. Plenty of football in the afternoon. I'm not sure if I totally agree with Eddie Hearn's logic there. If Chantel Cameron was to get a knockout victory against Katie Taylor, they're for Cameron's titles, so Katie Taylor would still be holding her undisputed lightweight titles. So people are still interested in watching the Serrano fight. I know it would take some of the gloss off Katie Taylor being undefeated and all that, but surely if people were interested to go and watch Serrano versus Taylor and Croker,
storyline is the storyline. I think it's the momentum and the final fight and all of that.
So hold on, does that not make this fight even more risky than we thought it was then? Or is Eddie just adding up the hype ahead of the fight?
Well, I think she had to take the fight.
Well, no, she wanted Chantel Cameron.
Yeah, but she wanted to fight in Dublin. So this was the opportunity.
DAZN wanted to fight on this weekend is the reason that's in the 3 Arena in Dublin this weekend.
What time's it on at?
Oh, probably Ringwalk could be around 10 o'clock or so. It's actually a substantial
expensive day, isn't it? 12 quid for the Mayo match. How much is DAZN?
I think it's $9.99 a month. I think you can get a longer pass for the year, but if you're watching it, by correct methods, it would be $9.99.
Don't be
it's either that or $4,000 to get in.
Oh yeah, exactly. There's definitely $1,000. I think I saw tickets for $1,500 available if you're that way inclined.
Rory McIlroy has just dropped a shot at the 14, so he's back to 2 over par. Shane Lowry is also on 2 over par. He's just about to play the 14. Padraig Harrington is on 1 over par, and Corey Connors is in the lead, 4 under par, 1 shot ahead of Ryan Fox and Victor Hovland. Then Scotty Scheffler lurking just a further shot behind. We'll keep you up to date with everything that's going on in the PGA throughout the evening, and we will keep you up to date with all the live football as well. Richie, good stuff as always.
Nice, lads.
Will, thank you.
Cheers, Nathan.
The Newsround is in association with Gillette Labs. Get the ultimate shave or your money back. Neon Night Edition available now. Time for the cash machine.
Your chance to win big. News Talk's cash machine.
So the cash machine has been reloaded and there's a very big amount of money up for grabs. The number you need to remember is €61,966.05. Text play to 57555.